Hi guys, my name is Amish Tripathi and I'm the director of the Nehru Centre. The Nehru Centre is the cultural wing of the Indian High Commission in the UK, and we've been in existence for many decades, and we organize wonderful events at this very auditorium, which is in Mayfair in central London. Sadly, as you can see, the auditorium is empty. It has been empty since we were all put into lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. But what we Indians believe is that the other side of a crisis is an opportunity. And what we have done at the Nehru Centre is moved all our events online. So now if you attend our online events, every single seat is a VIP seat. Like you get a front row at our events. No trouble of parking, no trouble of traveling all the way. And most practically all the programs that we would do, like literary discussions and dance performances, musical performances, we are doing them all on our online channels. You can register for our newsletter at our website nehrucentre.org.uk. You don't need to write them down, they will be displayed at the bottom of the screen. You can also come to our Facebook page, which is a verified page, the Nehru Centre. You can follow updates on all our events on Twitter as well, the Nehru Centre, that's also a verified account. Or you can come to our YouTube channel, again, the Nehru Centre. We are nothing if not consistent. I hope you do come to our online channels and enjoy the events that we are putting up for you. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Namaste, Jai Hind.
Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, big hello everybody. As I welcome you all to another exclusive event at the Nehru Centre, UK. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day. Today our virtual room is filled with some path-breaking women, trailblazers and huge inspirations. Before we dive deep into talking about women in leadership and inviting them, we have a message by Her Excellency, Gayatri I. Kumar. Let's have a look.
Happy Women's Day to everybody who's on board and all the distinguished participants in this program. I'm absolutely delighted that we are hosting Women's Day at the Nehru Centre in London. At the very outset, I would like to convey my sincere greetings to the women of India and the UK and women all over the world on the occasion of International Women's Day. I'm absolutely delighted that we have with us 4 iconic Indian women achievers here in London. Each of them has, while happily pursuing a very normal passion, actually emerged as an incredibly accomplished achiever. And it is appropriate that our viewers should hear from them and be inspired by their thoughts and their vision and how they feel about everyday things and important things on Women's Day. So while this is an occasion when we pay tribute to women the world over for their many gifts to society, we must remember that in India, the discourse on women's empowerment started even before India became independent. Our Vedas, our teachers, our religious icons have always stress the importance of respect to women. Our constitution further enshrined the principles of gender equality in our legal and our public policy. And women in India, it has to be said, are recognized by law as holders of equal rights, they're equal partners and agents of change in the social, economic, cultural and political processes of our country. For example, in the realm of local self-governance, more than 1 million women in rural India, far beyond the stipulated 33%, have participated in Panchayat rule, in Panchayat Raj, in local self-government, taking their roles very seriously and discharging their responsibilities with great success and commendable outcomes. In challenging domains like the defense services, police and security forces, in sports, academics, space research and innovation, in taking up the cause of the vulnerable and the exploited, in community outreach and in mass healthcare, women are now indispensable for success. For those who've not been so fortunate, there are new opportunities in the innovative women's empowerment schemes launched by the Government of India. Free cooking gas cylinders, opening of bank accounts, building toilets. In all these massive all India drives, empowerment has been a central and very important theme. Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has today greeted women and said that India takes pride in their many accomplishments. He has stated that it has been an honor for his government to work towards furthering women empowerment in the country across a wide range of sectors. And I quote him, "Today, women have become an integral part of India's security and defense architecture. The targeted outcome of such an empowerment is to create an atmosphere where women feel free, safe, and secure to pursue any vocation, profession, or take a road less taken." The High Commission of India in London, in our small way, has contributed to the well-being of our sisters, some of whom have found themselves in challenging situations in a foreign land. We have established a distressed women's cell in 2014. In the last 3 years alone here, we have received more than 200 requests for assistance, and we've been able to help many of them financially as well, I'm happy to say. And so with these words, I once again offer on behalf of the High Commission of India to the UK, our best wishes to our sisters in India and in the UK. I offer the distinguished participants in today's program my very best wishes for their continued success. And I very much look forward to meeting you all in person as soon as it is possible. Thank you. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you, Dear Excellency. Friends, I'm so excited to meet our panelists. But before I welcome them, I must invite our visionary director at Nehru Centre, Amish Tripathi, who makes events as eclectic as these possible. Besides being our director at Nehru Centre, working with Amish is a joy for everyone, especially women. So his presence is very important today. He's an evolved feminist as he inspires equality, free expression, and always thinks ahead of the curve. His leadership style evokes confidence, openness in decision-making, and he's always aiming for perfection. Amish, of course, is a diplomat, an author, a columnist. Amish has been listed amongst the 50 most powerful Indians by India Today and has written 10 books till date. His latest, Sohail Dev and Dharma with Bhavna Roy, are trailblazers. Let's welcome Amish Tripathi.
Thank you, Rageshwari. Thank you for having me. And I promise to all the viewers out here, this is a day for the ladies. So regrettably, since I'm the director of the Nehru Centre, I have to show my face here. But I'm going to answer one question and then I'll flee. I'll leave it to the ladies.
But we always want a man's perspective as well. We believe in gender equality. With your permission, Amish, may we invite our panelists?
Please.
All right. So let's start with the voice of Brit Asia. We all love her. Gurinder Chadha, OBE. Gurinder Chadha has such a fascinating story. He was born in Nairobi, Kenya, moved to Southall, West London, and when she was just 2 years of age. So many of her future films would draw on her personal experience of being Indian and English at the same time, and how she dealt with the duality of her identity. For example, Gurinder would not wear traditional Indian clothes and she refused to cook for her family. In her mind, having all the women in the kitchen cooking while the men sat and ate was oppressive. Therefore, she sat at the table with the men and was extremely outspoken. But interesting, let me tell you, I have tasted her food and she is phenomenal. Her remarkable journey of creating films which are path-breaking is inspirational. From her multi-award-winning Bhaji on the Beach, Bride and Prejudice, Viceroy's House, Beecham House, and Bend It Like Beckham, which remains the highest-grossing British film. What an overachiever of a woman, and definitely not passive in depicting women as strong, non-conformists in her smash hit movies. Please welcome Gurinder Chadda, OBE. Sat Sri Akal ji.
Sat Sri Akal, namaste. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for your time, Gurinder. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to invite all the other panelists so that you can all meet with each other, and then we'll have an amazing debate. Next, please allow me to welcome Akshata Murthy. Akshata is a director at Catamaran Ventures UK Limited. Originally from Bangalore, Akshata obtained her undergraduate degree in economics and French from Claremont McKenna College in Los Angeles and an MBA from Stanford University. Prior to Catamaran, Akshata founded her eponymous clothing label, working with craftsmen in India to contemporize heritage designs for a global audience. In the UK, Catamaran is focused on the consumer tech sector with a view on investing in fast-growing British brands that require strategic capital. Please welcome Akshata Murthy. Thank you, Akshata, for being with us. Happy Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day.
Thank you.
I now welcome our next guest, the recipient of the prestigious Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar is Arunima Kumar. Arunima is one of Britain's most celebrated award-winning Kuchipudi artists, an extraordinary artist, choreographer, producer, and a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion in arts and culture. She's the founder, artistic director of Britain's largest Kuchipudi institution with over 150 students. She took a bold step to give up her illustrious corporate career to focus on promoting Indian arts and culture and serve the diaspora and communities as a strong advocate for India. Welcome, Arunima. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much, and very, very happy Women's Day to everybody.
Happy Women's Day.
We welcome our last guest, last but not the least, Sunita Bhuyan. Breaking myths is what violinist extraordinaire Sunita Bhuyan loves doing and has many such firsts to her credit. She's a pioneer in the corporate world, training on leadership and change through the medium of music. Her music therapy workshops for more than 20,000 less privileged children across India has gotten her a recognition from the Pope himself at the Vatican. And finally, she's the first violinist in India to play Assamese folk on the hitherto classical instrument, the violin, and fuse it with Scottish and Irish and world folk. Her album Bihu Strings is the only album of folk on the violin. Sunita and her son, Ronajit Bhuyan, have been actively engaging and spreading positivity by music from home during the lockdown and were the first to do a balcony concert in India as a tribute to Corona fighters. How wonderful. Welcome, Sunita. Welcome to each one of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rageshri, and happy Women's Day. And thank you, Amishji, for putting together this wonderful event once again.
Amishji is the brave man amongst women. So, as I said, that it's always wonderful to have perspectives of both men and women, especially where Women's Day is concerned, and especially where my question is concerned. And we must start with Amish because I have personally seen Amish is very forward thinking. He inspires women, he encourages them to grow and take leaps. So, Amish, what is your definition for a feminist? Is it a feminist who fights only for women's rights or a feminist who is gender neutral? Because if someone is in danger, will it matter if it's a man or a woman? Or should we be more concerned about human rights, particularly because your book Dharma and your book Sita talk about feminism in a very unique way?
Yeah, no, I think, essentially it is about seeing women in leadership roles. And one of the things I've said repeatedly, that those of us who fight for equality between men and women are not in any way being less Indian. We are in fact being more Indian. This is what our ancient culture actually preached. Our most ancient scripture was the Rig Veda. It has hymns written by Rishikas, who are the equivalent of women prophets. It has hymns by Rishis and Rishikas. We had women queens who ruled in their own name, like Rani Prabhavati Gupta, like Rudrama Devi. We had women scientists. This was a part of ancient Indian tradition, and regrettably, the state that is there today in India is actually not in line with what our ancient culture should have been. There is a lot that men need to do to make changes possible. Men need to be comfortable with accepting women in leadership positions. My present boss, Gayatri I. Kumarji, is a woman. And in India, in the banking sector, it was very common to have women bosses. I did have. And essentially, I suspect what has happened in modern India and modern Indian culture is women have made many strides, men have made some movements, but we need to do a lot more, and we need to revive our ancient traditions, because it's only when all of society is empowered that the society moves ahead. And I think I should keep my answer really short. One should hear the ladies right now.
Of course, I would love to ask Gurinder the same, because I've seen her parenting style is so unique, and I know her wonderful children, Kumi and Ronak. So it's very remarkable, the atmosphere in a home, very gender neutral. I think almost Kumi gets to make the decisions, right, Gurinder?
Well, I think what Amish says is fantastic. We come from a great culture of strong women. We only have to go to any mandir or gurdwara and you see, the presence of murtis, of women. Also within, my own faith, in the Sikh faith, the Guru has insisted on equality of women and brought them in to the faith to help lead. So I think that, I've grown up with that, so sometimes people call me a pioneer, and I say, well, I really only could do it because of the people whose shoulders I stand on, and people who were fighting, always fighting and ruling, and having that sense of a sense of who they are. And then I instill that in my children. And I think that, for us, however we want to look at it, wherever you stand politically, I think the cover of Time magazine with all the Punjabi women in their salwar kameezes, fighting with the farmers right now, that's a dynamic image that I never thought I would see on the cover of Time magazine. But I think it's a testament to the strength of Indian women, all Indian women, that Indian women feel like if they have to get up and speak, they will. And the Quit India movement, of course, was full of women as well. So I think there's this inbuilt thing in our culture that if there is some kind of injustice, we all feel that, we it's our responsibility to speak out. And being a woman, I think, and an Indian woman, I carry that because generations before me have carried that. And I have to put it onto my children, both my son and my daughter.
Yeah, let's have an artistic and a creative viewpoint from Arunima. Arunima, what is your definition of feminism?
I think feminism for me is, to just believe in who you are and to believe in yourself and to believe in your skill. So I was very fortunate to come from a family where, my father, who was a police officer, and my mother, who was a theater artist, and we have two sisters. They never made us feel that we are girls. Whereas, the outside world always made us feel that we are girls. So we were, asked to do whatever we wanted and with full conviction. And I think that stayed with me, and that work ethic stayed with me. I have never felt, a lesser gender or a lesser person because of my choices. And that makes me feel very empowered. And as everybody said, the culture itself gives you that impetus. It's just sometimes perceived, in a wrong way. So I think it is for everybody to believe in who they are. And I think that's what really carries us forward. And, I've always liked to break stereotypes. So if there is a stereotype, it is my innate personality to go and rebel against it. And it's only because, I feel that there is no one lesser in this world, whether because of your gender, because of your age, because of your ability. And, I've strongly believed in that. So that is who I believe a woman is.
Thank you. Thank you, Arunima. Thank you for your patience, Akshata. Of course, I want you to contribute on that, but I also want to ask you that, are you aware of the 42 country-based study? They did a study that men are less supportive in more egalitarian nations. So the study was published in the European Journal of Social Psychology. And the researchers found that regardless of nationality, that the more a nation believes in zero-sum thinking, the less supportive men become. So my question is about this zero-sum thinking, where gains for women equate to losses for men. So respecting Amish, he doesn't think this way at all, because he always lifts, all the women, be it, Archana, me, everybody around him. What I mean to say is the studies show that. So this remains a key barrier, to further improvements in equality. So how can we replace it? That when a woman gains, a man gains too, especially in the corporate world.
That's a really interesting study. I haven't heard of it, but sure, it makes a lot of sense. But it reminded me, just as Gurinderji was speaking and Arunima, who's a dear friend, was speaking, of an anecdote in my own life. I studied in the US for my undergrad, and actually it was in business school. There was a class I took at Stanford, and it was called Work-Life Balance. And there were invariably, I think, mainly women, maybe one man, and it's sort of, he took it because it was an easy class or whatever. but what was interesting is this whole discussion about how women have to juggle work-life balance, especially in the corporate world. And I sort of was a little puzzled because growing up, I grew up in a family of very strong women. And women were the majority, men were the minority, both in terms of making their voices heard, but also in terms of numbers. And my mother, being one of them, has always worked, but also helped look after, and I say help, the key word, because it was a village that I think it takes a village to raise a family, and there were men and women. My grandfather was involved, but also my father was involved in different ways to the way my mother was. And so I never thought it was just a woman's job to have this work-life balance. It was the family's job to have this balance. And I think the more we are raised with that thinking, and it starts from such a young age, again, something that Arunima has spoke about, and I believe that I have two young daughters. My husband has a very busy job. I have a very busy job. We make it work because it's the family's job to ensure that young boys and girls work together, but also grow up believing that they both have roles to play in how society functions. Well, first your family functions, and then your society functions. And perhaps culturally, in India, we have that mindset, perhaps in a more innate way, despite what sort of rhetoric surrounds men versus women. Maybe culturally, it takes a village to raise a family, and so you can have men and women involved. And maybe that's not as prevalent in perhaps a more Western setting. It's just a conjecture, but that's sort of where how I think about it.
Yeah, and also I feel that if the woman of the house is happy, it creates ripple effects. Children are happy. That's why they say happy wife, happy life. Would love a man's perspective on that. Amish, what do you feel? Do you agree with the study that men become less supportive when they see women rise much more? They're like, okay, they're equal now, so I don't need to give them that extra platform or put them on a pedestal. It sort of makes sense, on a lighter note, when girls say, I want to be treated like a woman. And then when they, treat me equally, and they go out on a date, and then they don't pay the bill, then they get offended as well. They're, oh my God, the man never paid the bill. But oh my goodness, you've given me such an impression that you're such an equal. So I thought we'd go Dutch. So something as lighthearted as that. But of course, coming back to what are your views on equality?
I think, building on especially what Gurinder and Akshata said about the family and how important it is. Because, one of the things, at least, and I'll say this very briefly, that children don't do what their parents tell them to do. They do what they see their parents doing,
Yes.
right? So if there's a father telling his son that you must respect women, but they see their father disrespecting their mother, they will learn that, and one of the good fortunes of the family I was born in is, I mean, for example, we are three brothers, one sister. My sister is the eldest, and my parents were very clear that the same rules apply to all four. So I'm 46, so we were growing up in a slightly more conservative India. I come from a humble background, so we were more traditional. So my sister was allowed to go out, but she couldn't spend the night over at anyone's place, which meant that the three of us brothers were not allowed either. Right? Same rules for everyone. There's no special treatment. Right? I remember once, I've been slapped by my father only twice. Once I didn't deserve it. Once I did, and I was glad I was slapped because I'm a better person because of it. And why I was slapped is my twin brother and I. We had been told no by Ma on something, and Dad was the kind of person who used to spoil, and Ma was very strict, right? And later, when Dad came, we asked him, and he didn't know that we had asked Ma and she had said no. So he just told us yes, right? Later, when he discovered, he slapped both Ashish and me, and his thing was, how dare you even ask me? If Ma has said no, it means I have said no, right?
Yeah.
And that was a good lesson that we learned, that there is clear equality between the father and the mother. And I was glad I was slapped at that time. I think I'm a better person because of it. So the family unit reinforcing these values, in my mind, is most critical, because then that's what makes a society, and then the society makes the world.
Yeah. It creates beautiful ripple effects. There was something beautiful that Bhavna Roy, the author that we're talking about, said, that the best thing you can do for your children, love your spouse. How interesting. How beautifully said, while we always think about it in another way. Let me bring in Sunita. Sunita is coming live to us from a studio. So Sunita, firstly, what is your definition of feminism? And also, you work very closely with your son. So are you conscious that you want to bring him up differently so that he treats women differently?
Absolutely. Like, just now Amishji said about, it's not what you tell the children what to do, it's what they see what their parents do. Yes, he's 21 years old, and quite a challenge for, to be able to collaborate. 1 year, we were locked on together in the same house, and he had no choice but to play with me, someone who's so many years, I won't tell you how many years older to him, and not from the same generation. And he's trained in Western classical. I'm trained in Indian music. And so the coming together was a challenge. But at the end of the day, we wanted to make good music. So he did support me a lot. However, every time my husband and I, we have a spat or a fight in front of him, I say, it's very important the way we behave in front of the young chap, because that's what's going to define how he's going to treat his wife. And wives are not going to be like us, because they're from different generations. So they'll be maybe less patient, less cooperative. So it's very important that we show the respect that we give each other if we really want a young boy to grow up to respect women. I think educating the girl child is not so as necessary as educating the boy child. I think we must change, Amishji, like they said, 50, in the 50 powerful lists of India, we've got to educate the boy child as much as the girl child, because like your parents ensure that you can go out along with your sister, let's all ensure across the country that boys need to be trained along with the girls to be about equality. And that's when they grow up into men and gentlemen who know that it's not about girl or boy, it's about respect to each other. So I think that's the message. You show them what you do and they just see you and they grow up.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Sunita. Gurinder, I want to talk about, the University of Southern California. In a study had said that change towards gender equality is being slowed by legitimizing social inequalities on the basis of sex. So over 20 years, 45 different analyses observed that men or women are actually alike. With that, I mean personality, cognitive ability, and leadership abilities. So it was the media depiction of men and women that perpetuates differences. Now, you're the voice of British, and your movies are ahead of the curve as your women have always had powerful minds. So is it a conscious decision in your mind to create films where your women have very strong minds? Because, it then changes the moral fabric.
Well, it's very interesting. When I was making Bend It Like Beckham, and and Anupam Kher had joined the cast, and as we were shooting, Anupam was getting very concerned because he felt his wife was like taking over every scene. The mother was taking over every scene. Yeah. She had all the laughs. She had, the big expansive gestures, and he was the quiet kind of guy in the back, But, at the end, his character shines through. Yes. Because at the end of the day, it's the father who says, what, I'm wrong. I have to let my daughter do what she thinks is right, not what I think is right. She has to go out and forge her own life, and at that point the mum's quiet, if you remember this, she just says, at least I taught her full Indian dinner,
Aloo gobi, if I remember the
aloo gobi.
Exactly. But my point is that the world turns on this amazing relationship between men and women, right? In the home, in marriage, in all facets of life, right? Marriages, families happen because because of the dynamic between the two, right? And in most cases, it's functional. Some cases, it's dysfunctional, right? But in most cases, it's functional. And as I said in Pride and Prejudice, no life without wife, which is what my dad used to say, And there was no bigger feminist than my dad, who had a daughter like me and was pushing me. So I think that the way we are gender inequality is perceived, we are right to stand up. Where the whole Me Too movement was absolutely right. And there are all kinds of aggressive and terrible things that happen to women in the workplace, in all kinds of city life, village life. We all know that's a terrible thing. And part of that comes from the culture of the fact that women are seen often as weak and dispensable, right? Mm-hmm. I think the reality, though, is that if we as mothers raise our sons, to be respectful of women, that really is the hope for the future. So what I see is a lot of, kids, really, like my nephew, my nephew goes into schools and talks to young men about, how to be a good guy. He started doing that himself. So he goes in, talks to young, 14, 15-year-old guys on how to be good when it comes to gender, So I think we're seeing this change, and of course that's depicted. I try and depict that in my work, but I think, I think that there's two different things. There's society as a whole and how we are. And I do feel that in many cases, as I said, family life is equal. But then I do think that what we hear a lot about are those cases where it's not equal. Yeah. And, and those are tragic. Those are a tragedy for all of us, Sure. And whenever in any society where we hear of a terrible story of rape, doesn't matter which society, of a child, that's a shock for all of us as humans, and that is why we have to keep fighting, I think, is to change those kind of pernicious views, in our world and our society.
And that's why you're not passive, portraying that in your films. Thank you. Thank you for that, Gurinder. So that was one aspect, that we teach our boys to respect women. I believe vice versa. Akshata, how do we then create better job opportunities for women in the corporate world? It's perceived it's male dominated. So fine, what about women who have not had a balanced, home environment? But they still have to come and make a living, and they want to make a name.
Yes, and I think there is a lot of focus on this, whether it's getting more women on boards of companies, whether it's getting more women higher up in the CXO level of management. And it starts with acceptance of differences. So it's differences across the board. Gender is certainly a really big one. So is ethnicity. But so is things like appreciating each other's perspective. I was born in India, I was educated and lived in the US, and now I live in the UK. So I have a very different perspective on the world when compared to perhaps someone who is born and raised in the UK, just as a function of where I have lived and studied and worked. And as long as both perspectives are welcome in a discussion, whether it's in a corporate setting or otherwise, and interesting points of view are heard and understood, it's the start. Because ultimately, I think, whether it is about getting more women who up across the corporate ladder, which is a big task, or whether it is just making small changes in our day-to-day lives, it's just about acceptance of differences, and acceptance then leads to understanding, which then goes to much bigger changes. And I think, look, the world is changing so much in that regard, certainly in the corporate world, but across the board. And it's great to see that more women are demanding that kind of acceptance, and that's the start of what I think is really a revolution in work.
Amish, I would love your perspective on, when that was from a point of view of someone who heads a company. Oh, you wanted to add something?
No. May I suggest I shouldn't speak? I mean, let the ladies. I want to be in the audience. I just want to.
You want to be the audience?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I think I've said a few things.
Amish, fine. We will respect your decision. Arunima, I wanted you because you've changed continents like me, but changed jobs as well. From the corporate world to an artistic world is inspirational. I want to talk about that, but taking over from where Akshata has left, she talked about from the point of view of a head of a company. As a young professional girl who's looking out for a job, wants to enter an industry which is male dominated, what could you tell her? Because you're such a successful leader in what you do. What would you tell her? This is what you need to do to balance out any kind of issues that you may have and forge ahead in life.
Thanks, Rageshwari. Just before that, I want to also comment on, what has just been said. So I have, while growing up in India, being a woman, being a girl, I was always faced with all of these benchmarks or stereotypes that women have to live up to. Correct. So, for example, being beautiful, so, your body image, or being the good wife, as you grow up. Being sacrifice, the virtues of sacrifice, the virtues of acceptance, the virtues of adaptability, all of these, wonderful values shown at us. And but I also saw that from what my friends experienced, and so many of them went through, mental illness issues, it really provoked me, and I created a piece called Stree, which was about breaking the stereotypes, because it basically created images of our from our culture on Rati, who's supposed to be this most beautiful, Indian goddess, Sita, of course, who's a virtuous wife, and Sati, who's, the pinnacle of sacrifice. And then at the end, I asked my audience, what is it that a woman should be? She should just be who she wants to be. And then I kind of paint with my feet while dancing, a portrait of a woman, and to just let her be free and just, forget this old paradigm. So for me, stereotypical or stereotyping women is really difficult, because I face that, because I used to work in the corporate sector. When women are successful, there's something attributed to that success. It's like, oh, she must be doing this, and that's why she's successful. So I really wanted to break that. Now, coming to your current question, I think it was very difficult when I moved from India. So when I moved from India, I had a settled career, both in corporate as well as in arts. And when I moved here, I was, I often say I was on a lonely planet, a dark, cold, lonely planet with deafening silence. And I did, have to take very small micro steps. But I think how I built myself, or how I built this career, was having faith in myself and having a very strong professional work ethic. Because I said, even if I create a very small artistic piece, it has to be the best of what I could do. So before I started work, I watched a lot. I went to performances. I saw, how beautifully, London, has this vibrant art scene, and I'd never experienced that. So I saw that, because that was my competition. So really know your competition, and then to have a very strong professional ethic of whatever product you have, whatever you want to do, give the best of what your best. And then have discipline, because I think that is very important to me. And, I work with children, I work with adults.
Yes.
But for me, it's very important to have the attention to details. So even if you're on a video, where do you sit? Where is the correct light? Mark it out. So have that attention to detail, because someone is watching and somebody wants you to do well, but is also measuring you on different parameters. So give, the best every time, because my work has only grown because of word of mouth. I have rarely marketed it. And I think that is very important, because I think as women, we are very strong in whatever we do. We have, that innate sense of different skills. People during the pandemic, some women have just started cooking and made a cooking business out of it.
Yes.
Some women have started something else. So I think there are so many success stories, but whatever you do, be the best and have a little bit of patience, because it takes some time, but focus on the merit. So if you have merit, no one can dispute that. No one can question you. So have, build.
That's lovely. Merit. So that was a beautiful takeaway, to
Rageshwari, sorry to interrupt, but I just felt the need to add to
Sure,
incredible philosophy on life, which I wholly believe in. But what's interesting from a corporate perspective, I think what's happening, alluding to what I was saying earlier about accepting all kinds of thinking and perspective, I think women are creative. Men are also creative. And I think women's skills perhaps span a larger portfolio in a way, or maybe society allows women to express their skill sets in a wider sense, whether that be through culinary pursuit, or filmmaking, or investment banking, or the arts. So many different ways. And women are now learning to utilize their skills, their passions and their interests into and sort of defining that to perhaps fit into what may be defined traditionally as success. So in my own world of early stage investing, I actually have a number of women in my portfolio, and some of the CEOs, one of them runs a bridal jewelry business because she's passionate about gemstones. One of them runs a nanny search business because she, in her own life, has, as a working professional, had a number of issues with childcare, and has morphed that into a thriving business in childcare. Another woman works in the world of healthcare management. So really, I think women now are more able to come out of the home, and understand, okay, these are my passions. Now, how can I translate them into what society defines as successful? And they increasingly have platforms in which to do that. Arunima being case in point, right?
Yes, absolutely. Sunita, we've decided to call each other without the G. Audiences, corporate sectors say that you're such a dynamite performer of the greatest classical paradigm. So like most classical artists, you were not on social media. But as we've all struck with the pandemic, you adapted. And adaptability is such a powerful attribute. And I think women are, excel in that. Your digital shows are a rage as you play the violin, mixing genres and even singing. So what is the greatest barrier evolved artists such as you face?
Well, something that, thanks. And first of all, Rageshwari, there is no rush from the studio, like I mentioned when I started. So there's no rush for the studio timings, sure, like you mentioned. So, but like Arunima said, when people, the normal audiences see a successful woman, they want to attribute it to something more than talent. I think that's the barrier and because I was also in the corporate world for 20 years working as a full-time executive. That's what the attribute. So all my success in learning and development in HR was always attributed, she goes on and plays the violin and everyone just gets carried away. No, but there was content in the work that I was trying to do. So why do we use another attribute towards success is what the biggest challenge was. The next was the myth. The larger, all-pervading challenge, Rageshri, was the myth of the violin. Violinist hai, classical violinist hai, Pandit V.G. के शागिर्द है, वो तो entertain नहीं कर पाएंगे. So in Assam, in my own state, I was invited to play in the folk festivals at 6:30 in the evening, where all the seats are empty. Only people come to keep their seats so that they come and listen to the headlining artist at 10 p.m. That was really very disheartening for me. I said, but why have you called me at 6:30 when you could give me a slot at 9 p.m.? I'm going to come all the way from Mumbai to play. But Baido, which means Didi in Assamese, Baido, you are a violinist. You need to play at an elite slot, which is completely false. They're trying to tell me that you're a violinist. You'll never be able to entertain. You will make people sleep with your tunes. We're inviting you because you are a daughter of Assam and we've got to give equal, a reference, preference to all artists. That was very, very frustrating. And that's when I realized the violin has the power to change. It's across the world. It's being used in folk, in jazz, in rock. Why should I, because I've got trained in the craft, be branded as an artist who will not be able to make people dance with the violin, but be made to be elite just as a disadvantage, as a handicap for entertainment? So that's when I thought I must break the myth of the violin. So when I started playing folk tunes, the Assamese folk tunes into the violin, that's when they started telling me, okay, why don't you come and play at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock? Later on, it became 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Of course, I couldn't do the season. The reason I wanted to do the folk festival circuit in villages and small towns was to prove that it's not me as an artist, it's how you reinvent your craft, how you reinvent your instrument. And that's when I thought that breaking a myth is what's the most essential thing. And that's the barrier that we face as all professionals. And when I played Assamese Bihu on the violin, I realized the same kind of punch is there in Irish folk, Scottish folk. Why not do that also? As long as sur theek hai, tal theek hai, we can definitely explore and we can definitely innovate. The classics can also be modern. Tradition can also be new. The old is always new. So those are the kinds of myths that we have in our mind that, we can easily break. And I thought that's one lesson that I learned about breaking the myth on the violin.
Sounds exciting. We want to hear a little bit about your playing as well. But we have a whole lot of audience questions. They all want to know about your lockdown diaries. So I think the moms are really happy because children have gone to school today. So Gurinder, how have you handled the home, kitchen, homeschooling, and your big job? Because I know that you're a hands-on mom. You're always with your children. You and Paul, of course. Oh, we can't hear you, Gurinder. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
I did a little film for Netflix on lockdown. It was part of a series called Homemade, where they asked directors from all over the world to make a short film with our iPhones on our lockdown experiences. And that you can watch that. It's on Netflix. It's episode 15. And my hugest achievement so far in lockdown is teaching my children the Mool Mantra.
Ah.
That has been one good thing.
Amazing.
They recite the Mool Mantra. It's in the short film.
It's in the film?
It's in the film, yeah. They're learning it and they're getting it wrong and then they get it right. So I made it part of the film. So do watch that. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, homemade, and it's episode 15 on Netflix. But really, what's been really a pleasure during lockdown, I have to say, is I've seen my children go from children to teenagers, because they're 13 now. Oh. And when we started lockdown, they were children, age 12, and they were different. And now they're 13. It's all a lot of attitude, a lot of not Indian food again, Mum. You know, I'm not eating dal. No. Why can't we have Uber Eats? Why can't we, have Deliveroo? So that's like the biggest thing now, is getting them off their iPads and PS4s and eating with us as a family and cooking with us, trying to come up with interesting things. But I have to say, what I really miss is going with them to the Gurdwaras, going to Southall, doing all things that I do with them culturally to, keep them abreast of who they are, visiting relatives. We haven't been able to do any of that. And so I fear that they kind of go into themselves and into their own world. And like most children, they have retreated into social media or games, because that's the only way they can connect with their peers, but for me, I have personally, though, apart from the children, it's been a very productive time for me. I've been writing lots of scripts and been
fantastic.
Finished projects that I had been working on. I'd left half, came back, and also whilst doing some quite big Hollywood things, I also decided, well, what is my passion? What would I really like to do in Britain? And I decided I would like to make the film that defines the birth of the whole British Bhangra scene in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. So I've been working on that actually with Bali Sagoo and other artists of the time. So that's actually what I'm literally working on right now. And because that's a passion project. So with a lot of people with lockdown, I think the hard situation is that you're in Groundhog Day, that you get to bed, you get up, it's the same routine. But by writing scripts, I've been lucky to escape to different parts of the world, and different stories and different characters. Yeah. So I found that if I don't have my head in a script and I have my head in day-to-day stuff, I get down. But if I'm reliving amazing stories of Alap and Apna Sangeet and Achanak and DCS and all the great Bhangra bands of the 80s, and going back and looking at how important that time was for us as British Asians, because it was about forging the identity of the diaspora, right? Here, not in a problematic sense, not about racism or anything, but in a celebration of who we are. But then, of course, the impact that all then had in India on the music scene in India, when a lot of these artists ended up playing in Hindi movies, right? And then from that you have the popularity of Diljit Dosanjh and Grewal, all these artists in India. So it's really interesting to see the the relationship of the Indian diaspora through music.
Wow. So lockdown made you sit back and have a very interesting perspective on music.
Yeah, it gave me time to get off the hamster wheel and just sit back and really look at our lives and what they represent around the world.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Gurinder. Akshata, some lockdown diaries that you'd like to share with us, some pages.
You need to unmute.
We can't hear you, Akshata. Sorry.
I'm not sure I
Sorry.
understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just to echo for what Gurinder said about kids. Mine are 8 and 9, and they are already feels like teenagers. So I don't know what else is coming. But anyway, I have two passions: history and Western classical music. So I selfishly, during lockdown, have spent almost every evening pursuing one or the other. So I used to play the piano a long time ago, but I've taken it up in earnest, which has been incredible. And the first few times you think, gosh, there are really 10 other things I need to do. Do I really need to see my piano teacher, who is obviously 20 years younger than me? And but I said, you know what, I am going to do it. And it's been incredible, just an incredible journey, if I might call it that. And then history has always been a passion. And so whether it is studying Tudor England or studying currently the Russian Revolution, it's and my husband makes fun of me. He says, "Are you taking an exam?" And really, it's for me, it's really what I do to relax and go to bed. So that has been incredible. But also this time with the children has been special. Sure, quite traumatic sometimes, but special. And to see them evolve from being young children to less young children has been quite special.
Oh. And Arunima, thank you for that, Akshata. Arunima, because you have a wonderful schedule. You do these amazing online classes with children. You've continued that through the pandemic with my little Samaya. So please share how, what has lockdown taught you, inspired you, adapted. What have you adapted towards?
So lockdown has been a period of rediscovery for me, both personally and professionally. So let me talk about the personal front first. So I think it was wonderful to have my husband as well as my daughter at home. My husband is in banking, so I used to rarely see him, and we've spoken about it a few times.
Yeah.
It was really wonderful to have him, at home, and even though he was in his room, working, it was just the fact that he was there. I think my greatest achievement was that he could clean and cook at the end of it.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that. And sometimes he says, I say, the cleaner doesn't really clean as well as you do. And I think that's a difficult moment for him now. But I think, as a family, we could cook together, we could read together, we could watch TV together. We did some art together. My daughter learned how to cycle. And I think it was on those kind of, small little milestones, they became very special memories. If we would cook up something new from a recipe book and, be very proud of it, take photos. I think, these are special memories which will live with us. Of course, as Akshata said, it was traumatic. Homeschooling was, I think, really tough. I became an admin assistant, print this, Google.
And how old is little Aishwarya?
Aishwarya,
your daughter?
So I think the first lockdown was very hard, but with her I also learned, because I felt that she was so adaptive, because suddenly doing everything on Zoom, right? But they did not crib, they did not create a fuss, they just went on with it. And I think I learned a lot from that so can I. So I think on the personal front, it was quite nice to have shared responsibilities as a family, and to have shared moments of joy and love, and also sorrow. So I think as a mother, and I spoke about this with Akshata recently, as a mother, we give a lot, and I gave a lot. So sometimes I had my moments where I wanted to feel pampered as well. So that was on the personal front. Overall, very beautiful. And today I'm a bit tearful because she's gone back to school, so that was a little empty.
But still.
Yes, and on the professional front, it was my darkest hour, because I'm always a very planned person, goal-oriented person. So I make all of these wish list goals in January. but it all fell apart. So it was really hard. But then through online sessions, we created a project called Ekatra, which is Together We Can, with the support of Arts Council as well as, Akshata and Infosys Foundation. And I think with that support, we were able to reach out to several people and give them a safe space to just come together and dance. And I think that was the beauty. There was no judgment about the dance. We were just dancing. Normally we have to be perfect on stage, but here, on a Zoom session, we were just engaging, we were just sharing. And I think it was beautiful. And of course, with the children, I think they were the ones who gave me that joy, because, their innocence, the way they would come to the session and share their secrets for the week, it was wonderful. And I think for me, to reach out to communities, to reach out to elderly who are just sitting at home, stuck, not being able to go out and having these anxieties about shielding and about their age and about their illness, to again just have those, dance moments together where we could just celebrate being together, even if it was just the screen. I think, look at this, what a beautiful thing we can still do because of technology. And also, working with children with learning disabilities. So really opening up the access equally for everybody. It's not that they need to be able to come to me, somewhere. Sure. But just to have, at the click of a button, to be able to do that was in itself very, very special. I mean, just last week we worked with a group where they could not speak and they could not walk. So they are in terminal illness where, every year they get more and more disabled. But just to be able to share a moment with them and create whatever, even if it's a lift of a hand and twirl it. But if we can all do that together and find a little smile in that, I think for me, that was really, really joyful and special.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Arunima. And I do personally believe that, adversity is that fountainhead of truly, understanding what we're all capable of. So for me, on so many levels. But listen, I must get the brownie point because I have a 4-year-old. Okay, yeah. So it's and I have no help, and I have a QC who would rather. But it was exciting for me to see at that age, between 4 and 5, how the penny drops and how they just learn something. So I'm a teacher, but it was wonderful, and yes, emotional to say goodbye to them as they stepped into school. So let's have final messages, because we are going to have Sunita perform for us, but let's have final messages for International Women's Day. So may I start with our director? Message to our audience?
No, it's such a delight to host a program such as this, a celebration of women, International Women's Day. Huge strides have been made, a lot more needs to be done. And it's such an honor to share the stage with these super achievers. Thank you. Thank you for coming to our platform.
Thank you, Amish. Gurinder, your message on International Women's Day to everybody who's watching in.
Well, my message is just remember how great your voice is, how important your voice is, and how the world must hear your voice. Whether you're a farmer's wife protesting for your land, whether you're in America protesting for your voting rights, whether you're, Meghan Markle protesting about racism in the royal family. I mean, whatever, everyone needs to have a voice that is heard, whoever you are, from high to low. And really, International Women's Day is really, I think, about making sure that everybody, whether you agree with them or not, has a voice and is able to express it and has the luxury of being able to express their voice. So use your voice and use it well, is what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Gurinder. Akshata, your message?
Thank you, Rageshwari, and again, happy International Women's Day. I think just to pick up from what Gurinder said, which is to use your voice, also to showcase who you really are, because the world is becoming more tolerant in so many different ways and more accepting. And for so long, we have all, men and women, but more so women, have had to put one to may perhaps portray a certain aspect of who they are, but I think the world is becoming so much more accepting of our entirety, and that's what I tell my girls. They are 8 and 9, and I say to them, whether you're tall, short, dark, light skinned, Indian, something else, etc., just don't ever shy away from who you really are and showcase your passions in your entirety. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Akshata. Arunima, your message on International Women's Day.
So my message is, this is what I truly believe in. Don't be afraid to stand alone. So be brave to stand alone, because the crowds will follow. And of course, support other women. So I think all the women on this panel, I have, seen how they support others and how they support other women. So support other women. And I think in the end, I would also like to say this quote by Rumi: "We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust." So,
Wow.
just scatter stars everywhere, because, you're bold and audacious, and, set yourself free.
Beautiful. Sunita, before I get to you, sharing your message with the audience that's streaming in, because you're going to also be playing, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all a happy Women's Day. And we at Nehru Centre, a wonderful, growing big family all across the globe. Please tune in. If you've missed this show, please go ahead and share the links with your family and friends. And we truly believe that gender equality is the future. The more we help each other, the more we, look out for each other's back. Sunita ji, over to you. Your message, and we'd love to hear you.
Thank you. The message that I have is for myself and for everyone, is that there is not to reason why, there's but to do or die. As a professional, as an artist, if you really want to keep your craft alive, the pandemic taught us that, the stage went away. International tours fell flat. I had 4 international tours, which take years to plan. They stopped in the year 2020. But there's not a reason why. There's but to do or die. I mean, the craft can't die. Hence, stream it from home, stream it from your garage, stream it from your balcony, but keep your craft going. And someone like me, who had no digital presence, didn't have Instagram, didn't know how to handle anything except the violin, had to learn to put up a home studio and operate from there. And let me share with you, after 1 year, since 23rd of March, this is the first time I've come to a professional studio. All that I did was from home, because I realized that Jodi tor dak shune kyo na ashe, tobe ekla cholo re. That's what Tagore told us. If you have no one to walk with you, you've got to walk alone. But we've come here to celebrate today. And we have so many people from across and I'm streaming this from Bombay. I'm from Assam, wearing an Assamese mekhla and Assamese handmade jewelry by the women of Assam. I would like to play a small Scottish folk piece and fuse it with an Assamese piece. And in between, to cheer the plan that Gurinder has for her next movie, put a bit of Bhangra in it. Let's see if the Bhangra also goes in along with the Assamese and the Scottish folk piece. Starting, of course, with a cry to the universe that spring is here. Let spring come in. If winter comes, spring is not far behind. Bhuluka bahore आँखी ओइ मोइना ओइ भोलुका बाहरे ओइ आँखी बतास बरुखुने उन्दुलायानी से ओइ ओइ आमाकु नथोबा राखी 1 2 3 4
Thank you.